Hi, how's everybody doing? So Bryson's going to kick us off here in a second. I just wanted to say thanks for joining us. And when we were putting this together, so Bryson and I, among other things, are both faculty with IONS, and we've done some other stuff. So we build a lot of content like this together and switch off. And so we were kind of asking ourselves, what, like the people here and you coming into the room, what do you need and want to know? And so we've tried to include as much as we can in a short little 50-minute session, but we'll leave some time for Q&A. But we assume that you're thinking, maybe you're in IT cybersecurity and you've been tasked with managing an OT cybersecurity program. Maybe you're with a manufacturer and you're trying to figure out how to deal with security for your products. I don't know about the other 452 of you in here, but at least 2 of you probably have those challenges. So that's what we're going to be tackling today.
Mandatory disclaimer. Everyone feel good? Who works in IT? Imagine that at RSA. Who works in OT? Smaller number. Also, they're the ones who really have the dread that's not faked.
So the things that we're going to talk through today is a little bit about, and what we're going to do along the way is explain what's different. And so the main takeaway from today, if you take away nothing else other than we're very entertaining, it's that we want to explain to you why and how OT is fundamentally different. There's a lot of concepts that do translate between IT and OT, but there are a lot of nuances about how we actually operationalize what we're doing, both from a policy perspective and from a controls perspective. And so you're going to see that theme as we go through, starting with things like inventory, segmenting. So I know that these are all things you've seen. You've heard people tell you to inventory. We're going to talk about what that actually means and what it looks like in these environments. We know that we've been telling you to segment. We're going to explain what that means, how, when, and why, and what kind of those steps are from crawl, walk, and run. And then we'll talk about vulnerabilities and risk, a little bit about the Purdue model and attack, and I'll give you some context about that shortly, and then validating controls, and of course we have the apply slide for what you should do when you leave this room.
Who's heard of the Purdue model? A certain number of them. Guess what? It's all a lie, and we're going to cover that. Teaser.
The confused executive is not really confused. So this is just a little joke about, the IT and OT culture. So if we kind of flip onto the next slide and we start to look at some of the differences between IT and OT from a culture perspective, what we will really realize if we peel this onion back is that at the core of what IT does and their goals and objectives and what OT is doing, they're very different. So in IT, we value things like quickness, agility. And in OT, we really, really value resilience and availability, right? You don't want those systems to go down. And so everything else that we do on top of those builds on what that underlying goal is. So some of the differences there are the culture, the objectives, and then people and experience, and the metrics that we're measuring against. Obviously, all of the education and training and how we do things leads up into that. When we get into inventory, Bryson's just looking at me.
Yeah, no. So who has a CMDB? That you trust, right? That's where you put the part down. That's worthless. Why is it worthless? Because nobody keeps it up to date?
Because nobody keeps it up to date?
No one has taken it serious.
No
one takes it seriously?
Yep. And who's going to do the work and the extra man hours in order to input that information?
So you mean the tool doesn't just do it? Am I allowed to say that, or I say, am I about to be escorted out? Mobs of vendors come and get me, right? We have these CMDBs. Everybody in here would say, yes, I'm supposed to have one. And in security, we're a customer to IT for that configuration management database that we never get. Now add OT assets, which I can't just discover through IP. I can't just willy-nilly scan and automatically pull them in, as much as that doesn't ever work anyway. And here we have the setup, right? You've all heard the aphorism, you can only defend what you know. Well, that's the starting point.
If I come down there, I'm so short you guys won't be able to see me. So I'm just going to stay up here for now. So let's talk about inventorying OT versus IT. So some of the activities, how we inventory, how we get that information, how we store it, and then the context around it and the types of data points are going to be a little bit different. So again, same concepts, a little bit different implementation here. There are certain things in the IT world that we do for scanning. There are certain tools that we use. I don't know how many of you guys, I just live with Nmap on all of my devices because I can't remember what IP addresses are on what. But there's a lot of these tools that we use in IT where we break things if we use them without some modification in the OT space, right? Those little devices, once we get down lower in the Purdue model, we'll talk about what that means. But in certain parts of an OT environment, things like open sessions, malformed packets, and IP packets that thing is not expecting just completely chokes and breaks that thing. And remember, what we said was, in OT, we value availability and resilience. We want that thing to stay up. So we don't want to send stuff to it that breaks it. So the activities around that are a little bit different. The next thing is, I came out of network architecture and engineering, and one of the things we used to do, even on the IT side, was a physical walkthrough. Because you will not discover everything in any type of digital scan, right? Even in the IT world, there's all kinds of crap that happens that just makes certain things invisible, and certainly when you get into like IoT and OT and ICS stuff, that is just more true. So physical inspections, get that hard hat, walk the floor, find the people who know what's going on in that space, and that's your second input for the inventory. And then the third is the business processes. So procurement, we've all been talking about supply chain risk and SBOMs and all of that. So we have opportunities, at least moving forward, to start to change how we interact with bringing those things into the environment and being way more intentional about change management. And I've worked with organizations that were private and public and ones that went from private to public and back again. And change management seems to be always blanketly the one thing that nobody has figured out. There's always something happens, and we're like, no, we'll do this. It's temporary. I'm going to get rid of this ACL because this thing's broken over here. I'm going to remove this VLAN. I got to change this VRF. I'm going to put this thing on this network, and I will come back later when I have time.
How's that working out? Yeah, still working out.
There is never an I will have time later. You're not bored. Is anybody ever bored at work? Like, do you just sit there and go, what, I wish I had something else to do? And then the tools. So we kind of talked about like why some of the tooling is different. And then the information available. So when we can't directly, for several reasons, if we can't directly interrogate an endpoint and see what's happening, IoT, OT, there's a lot of places where IoT and OT have similar challenges, but I don't lump them together from a solution standpoint because then how we solve the challenge is a little bit different. But there are other things that we have to do. We might need to put ourselves in a position where we can watch the traffic and not interact with the endpoint and harass it with packets it doesn't know what to do with. So there's all of these different tools. What are we looking at? What is this thing connecting to? And then as much, actually in the Cloud Security Alliance document coming out soon on Zero Trust for OT security, it's been described as metadata, and I kind of like that. So the other data points that are surrounding the typical CMDB type of inputs. You want me to tell people how they have to chop stuff up?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. So segmentation. The one thing that I get a little bit frustrated with is the guidance around segmenting IT and OT. Totally valid, but it shouldn't stop there. And segmenting between IT and OT does not mean you use all of the same infrastructure and your OT is on VLAN 12 and all of your IT stuff is on VLAN 1 through 10 and 32 or something, right? This is one of the main misconceptions, and here's where I think, Bryce and I spend a lot of time talking to customers and organizations who are going through this growing pain. This is where we want to meet you where you are, and so I'm going to talk through a little bit of where you might be now, which is nowhere near where we're going to be recommending, and then what the incremental steps look like, and then the priority of that type of segmentation in the context of everything else you're doing is kind of something you have to figure out based on the other stuff we're going to tell you today. The shared accounts and people and processes were all resource constrained. The one thing we're going to be telling you is don't share things like Active Directory between your OT and your IT networks. Huge vulnerability points. So I'm a defensive architect. My friend here is an offensive specialist. And so in a little bit, he's going to be talking about attacking and what these entry points are. So I'm kind of telling you how we build this, and he's going to tell you how he's going to break into what we've built. The shared network infrastructure, I gave you the example of, this isn't as simple as let's just VLAN things off. Because if that network infrastructure gets compromised, you're toast. And I don't know about you guys, but living in the networking world, I have a hard time even keeping up with Cisco and Palo and Fortinet. How many critical CVEs, 10s do we have in the network infrastructure?
I don't know, but I think they're calling us now.
Yeah. Is it dance time? It's not dance time.
Do you want to know the easiest way to create a hacker? Guess what? It's not somewhere else. It's your own employees when you create a control that gets in the way of them doing their job.
Yeah.
Have you seen that before? Yeah. We call it, right? We know what shadow IT is. And in production, it's the same thing. Furthermore, not only are you potentially annoying a team member, when you segment incorrectly, you break things. If you don't have the right sub-segments put together, you put things across that weren't meant and it breaks. You're thinking security. They're thinking this is how we make revenue. Whether it is money or it is mission, that's the purpose of operational technology. And when you break it, you only get one chance. Otherwise, you get to update your resume.
There are a lot of reasons to segment, but first I want to just show you guys the Purdue model so that we can kind of wrap our heads around this. Now, mommy and daddy have different feelings about the Purdue model here. I love the Purdue model as a starting point for conversations. And I'm going to show you a different version of the Purdue model in a few slides. But what this looks like in general, and this is very conceptualized, but it kind of describes what this looks like, is you have at that top layer where it says level 4, all of your traditional enterprise IT network, services, users, et cetera. And then we have some stuff in the middle that we consider to be that DMZ zone between IT and OT. And then in this particular graphic, all of that yellow from 3 down is what we've designated as the OT environment or OT network. And it's never as clear cut as this. This is the cute thing about network architecture is nobody's network actually fits in little boxes like this. There's cables going from here to here and serial connections and that, and nobody actually knows how it's connected half the time. And if you do, good job. But this is kind of what we start with, which is let's do this heavy segmentation between IT and OT. So looking at taking this away, and let's move to the next slide. I'm going to take all of that out for a second and just explain what you're looking at here without the color overlays. So as you start to get through that level 3, we're talking about in the world of OT, the systems that are managing and orchestrating, logging and controlling all of that. And then as we seep further down into the Purdue model, we see that we get closer to the actual cyber physical assets or the processes down here where we have less smart devices or possibly smart field devices that don't have the same capabilities. But what Bryson's probably going to say is, well, around levels 3 and 2, we're really just dealing with Windows infrastructure typically. A little bit of a stunted, neutered Windows architecture that we can't secure.
JJ, it's okay. It's only 3 generations old.
So let's keep going through this. And then, so the final, what we would love to see is when we get into a best practice, I'm kind of air quoting, we look at segmentation not just between IT and OT, but within the OT environment, and we start to understand, because we've done the discovery, we have the inventory. If you're in a zero trust world, we've talked about doing inventory and discovering your assets, and then we talk about mapping transaction flows. If you look in the world of 62443 with those frameworks for OT security, they talk about zones and conduits out of ISA, right? So we start to look at, you see these different colors. What should be talking to what further down in here? So our wonderful endpoint or end state is to have very granular control and visibility over every little component or group of component and what it should or shouldn't be talking to, and we have the visibility and control at that level.
Two takeaways I want to offer from this slide, which are not offensive. Not everything I say is offensive.
Offensive? Not everything you say is offensive?
No, it's not. So one, IT when they're coming into this is usually going like, hey, we're here to help. And everybody rolls their eyes. It's kind of like being the government. They don't want you. That top layer there below IT where we have the DMZ, think of that as a shared service. That is your chance to not come and say, hey, we're trying to bring you security because you didn't know what you were doing. That's your chance to say, here's something we can offer you that you want that'll make your life better. The second part is when we start getting down to the lower levels, that 0 to 2, where it is literally something making something, a physical change on the manufacturing floor, out in the operational environment. You don't have to have visibility of everything at the bottom. Because part of what makes it such a challenge to do asset discovery is it turns out your defensible architecture works as designed. It's a lot of an assumption in that statement, but let's just go with it for now. And it's the fact I'm not going to be able to just see behind that firewall, see behind that switch port. And maybe I don't want to. You don't always have to. And again, thinking in terms of a phased approach for discovery and segmentation to a defensible and monitored architecture, take it slow. That shared service space at the middle top is the place to get a win-win.
And I mentioned there were a lot of reasons to segment, and we can tie them all ultimately to security, but let's talk about some of the other benefits because I think this informs your journey through segmentation and how you prioritize where to segment. Starting with monitoring, because if you look at, who's looked at like enterprise IT firewall logs or switch route logs, right? Streams of what's the traffic that's passing through. Good luck, especially now with applications, right? Every endpoint is sending thousands of different traffic flows various places. We do have the benefit in the OT world of not having quite that sprawl and spiderweb and volume of traffic, but we can maximize that if we do our segmentation bubbles a little bit smaller so that we really, really have a grip on what should or shouldn't be communicating, and then when something is trying to do something outside of the norm. So monitoring, which then, of course, gives us the opportunity for early detection, for people like Bryson that are getting in and doing things, and then granular containment. So if something is compromised, now we have a very small, tight bubble. There's a security play in that, obviously, but there's also a business resilience play in that, which is if you're in manufacturing and every operation on this factory is worth, I don't know, $5 million an hour, if you can contain that, you've preserved the rest of that operational line and you can keep everything going. So from a resilience standpoint, this also has a huge play, which just translates into, dollar bills for everybody. And that's, so that's resilience, which we spoke about yesterday.
Let's get spicy. Who thinks vulnerability management is security? Anybody want to take the bait? You made eye contact too, and you're conveniently close. Tell me why it's, I know, I like to get interactive.
It's to protect against 0 days and attacks.
Okay, to protect against 0 days and attacks. Can you protect against a 0 day? Why not? It's an unknown vulnerability. Vulnerability management covers vulnerabilities I already know and misconfigurations in my environment. We do it because it is a compliance requirement. And what do we get for it? We get the Sisyphean list. You run the scanner, 50,000 items. And what do? Knock out the ones at the top. Who told you what's at the top? Some nerd in Europe who did CVSS. What does that mean for your organization? Well, let's say that works. So we knock out the top of that list. We run the scanner the next week. Did the list go down? It strangely replenished itself. There's more vulnerabilities. And guess what? There'll be more vulnerabilities and more vulnerabilities. It keeps going. And the Verizon report that just came out, in fact, vulnerabilities now, for the most part, were really more of a fear, uncertainty, and doubt kind of thing. The most common way in wasn't even technical. Social engineering. And they show that in the report. 74% of all attacks still have a human component. But vulnerabilities are starting to creep on the list. So it is a concern. The challenge to you is how do we take it from this metric of we completed something, because guess what? Work isn't about being busy. It's how did we make it ours? How do we defend us? How did we use an evidence-driven approach to do that? Anything you want to add to that? I'm on a roll. No problem. We'll just patch it, right? How's that working? How's that working in anything? They hate you. First of all, I mean, I'd like to punch that guy, but I don't want to say everyone hates everybody. How often is a patch even available in the OT environment?
That company went out of business 20 years ago.
That company went out of business 20 years ago. How do you know a computer is an industrial control system? It's at least 20 years old. I give a talk, it's called Why Is It Running Windows XP? And all the IT people are like, why would it be running Windows XP? And I'm like, because it's state of the art. Yeah, let that sink in. And that's true. It's not just a joke. If we don't laugh, we'll cry.
Yeah, but not every technology is legacy.
Not every technology is legacy. Yes, asterisks, nothing is 100%. Welcome to cybersecurity. Not everything is 100%. But systemically, this is the industry problem. Because we're dealing with, again, the reason I tell the 20-year-old ICS joke is because that legacy of expensive capital cost, of investment, of things that were designed to be highly available and long life cycle is that inertia that we have to work around. And in fact, this is an area where all of my years, I actually learned something from the operations and technology side that I think IT can take away. Because IT is used to the patch or the business accepts the risk, right? It's a binary decision point. And in OT, because we can't patch, we actually come up with a third option, which is if I can't solve the vulnerability directly, how do I mitigate the risk around it? And that's not accepting the risk, and we all, we'll get to it. We actually do something. And that's why, again, this all leads up to this, where we started talking about discovery. We started talking about segmentation to, again, a thoughtful, defensible architecture, because that's what enables you to mitigate something that you can't directly fix.
Yeah, and let me kind of tack onto that, because mitigation in these, we used to do this on the IT side, and then I think we just got lazy and blamed the vendor for not having some type of update or patch for us. But your mitigation might be you put some other protective control in front of it, right? You stick it behind a firewall of this or that. I know we used to have all kinds of neat little, snap-on hardware encryption things that we could put in front of stuff. So then the question is, how often is patching the answer in OT? And anybody want to take a guess? It's not 0, so.
I saw a hand in the middle. Never? Well, it's slightly above never.
It's slightly above never. I heard a 10. Did I hear 10?
What was that? He got it.
I know why he got it. Yeah, 4% of the time. That was out of a Dragos report. Now, mileage does vary here, and it does depend, but sometimes there's not a patch. Sometimes there's kind of a patch, but it doesn't actually solve the problem. A lot of times, I think the number of errors that they found in the CVEs of actually describing the problem was a very high number, over 50%. And then even when we are going to patch something, in an OT environment, you don't just walk over to it and go, yeah, run the updates now, and then go have coffee while it's updating. You usually have to call a vendor, arrange it, they bring stuff in, you've got to walk over to a kiosk or some machine that's designed to scan removable media. You do that, you wait for that to happen, then you go over, and that could be days. Then you go over and you try to update the thing while you've scheduled your maintenance window, which might have taken you several months to negotiate as well. So patching is not always the answer. We can put other controls and mitigation that's not just patching.
So there's two aspects to a vulnerability. And I always like to, I was an Army officer, I always say we have to work with what we can control. Can I control the adversary? No. Can I control the adversary when they come into my space? Yes. You're on my home turf. They are not omniscient. They are not all-powerful. They have to learn too. And guess what? They make mistakes. So the starting point is what matters to you. Again, I made the joke about the nerd in Europe who gives the CVSS score. And the reality is that gives you an idea of the criticality of that vulnerability by itself. But what matters is what it means to you. What's the impact and the potential access? One of my favorite stories to demonstrate access is the Sands Casino hack in 2015. Everyone know that? Who knows that story? Right? Sheldon Adelson in 2014, who is the owner of the Sands Casino, has some very strong opinions about the Iranian regime. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard says, we have an opinion too, and we're going to do something about it. As you can imagine, Sands Casino has excellent security. We've all seen Ocean's 11. That's kind of how it works. There's no,
And
don't worry,
12
there's
and
no, there's
13
no
and
George
14.
Clooney in this. I know, I'm so sorry. Ocean's 8 should have treated you all better. I feel so bad. But you've seen it. They've got money. And so how they were able to break in was you don't go into Fort Knox. You find the back door. And the back door is that Sands Casino, because aesthetics are a part of the experience. And I share that as a metaphor because you're going to find things in your business, in your organization, that don't make sense to you. But the business is like, this is really important to us and we love it. Well, that would be the same way you would feel about supporting a multi-million-dollar fish tank in a lobby. And I don't know a lot about multi-million-dollar fish tanks other than probably water quality is important because dead fish don't really complete that aesthetic. And I'm not going to have somebody sitting there just dipping and testing it. So I'm going to put a remote sensor in. And that remote sensor is going to be monitored by Bubba's Fish Company, which I'm going to guess is probably all three people. And it was his cousin Gary who put the IT in place. Don't ask me why every IT guy's name is Gary. They tell me the name's Scott. I'm like, it's Gary. It's very strange. And so they managed to break into that. And the fish tank by itself isn't critical. It's nice. It helps. But it turns out that fish tank connected to the core network. $50 million in damage later. Access of something that isn't impactful itself is a part of this. And then there's the external piece, right? We need to address that. So the exploit predictability scoring system, EPSS, with First.org, has done a really good job of statistically improving that overlap of vulnerabilities folks are telling you to patch with what actually is getting exploited. And they are on version 3, and they show you their work, where they are slowly actually getting that down to a higher signal ratio. There's still going to be a lot of noise there. It's not high return, but I appreciate that that's out there in the world, somebody who's working that problem, because your threat intelligence vendor ain't. No matter how many languages they speak, on how many fake accounts they have on the dark web, isn't it funny that you never get the intel until after it hits? So my view is work with what you control, understand that vulnerabilities, those vulnerabilities we can in your own context. The other stuff is extra credit icing when you grow there. It's sexy, but it's not going to be a game changer to start. Wait, do scanning?
Before you do scanning, I want to say also context matters because you mentioned here that not all systems are super old and legacy, and OT like IoT is not. Well, I don't want to say it's not well defined. I think we've done a good job defining it within the industry, but externally, especially as you start dealing with marketing from vendors, it's a little bit mushy. And so, the spectrum here is we're dealing with everything from the systems that might be in place for 10, 20, 50 years running the power grid. Or we might scale that down and say the stuff that's in place for things like wastewater treatment or water pumps out at the station that get water further out of the city. And then you come down into, well, now we've got facilities maintenance, OT. One of the projects I did was a school who is an energy positive school. They actually put power back into the power grid. So there's all kinds of sensors and things to make that happen. And then you've got maybe smart lighting as a subset of some facilities things and door entry. And so, your definition of OT and the reason you're here in this room might be any one of those things. And so some of the recommendation when we say what ifs or these spectrums of things, it's a little bit different here if we're talking about the power grid versus your lighting control system, right? So take that within the context of the use case.
So we got 10 minutes, so we're gonna rush a little bit here. So three kinds of scanning, right? You cannot just scan. So most of the innovation that's been happening in the market there has been passive scanning. Again, this is where your defensible architecture actually makes that more difficult. I am restricting the traffic that I can see into my device to be able to do it. This, again, speaks to why it's so important to have a phased approach, work down to the level that you can. Don't necessarily need to go further all the time. Think at a phased piece. Active querying is now the next piece, which is the cutting edge of these auto discovery pieces, where what I'm doing is going like, I know a fair amount of equipment. I know how to fingerprint it. I know how to reach out and properly touch it without killing it. And then the active scan has taken that even a step further. So this is what's going on in industry to make that discovery more automated and easier.
Well, and we have 20 minutes for all of you that look very confused and
Oh,
are
I
looking
thought
at
we
your
were-
watch, but we're going to end early so that we can talk to you and have some Q&A.
She's
if
the
you would
boss.
like to.
She keeps me on
I'm
target.
his handler for the hour that we're here. So we've already talked about this. So.
Okay. Relationships, relationships, relationships. You may think you work at the same company, but if you're IT and you cross over and you're not in PPE, get off my floor, right? Don't wreck my stuff. I have so many calls with clients throughout, and they always start by like, hey, Bryson, look at this technical architecture we've put together, because we're following that second thing. We've thought through, we've segmented, and the first question I always ask, because they're like, usually they're about a year and a half into having a piece of paper that doesn't do anything. And they're like, well, surely the problem must be technical. Maybe there's some square to some line that isn't correct. And always the starting point is, have you talked to them? No? Okay, well, step one, maybe we should go talk to them. And then I get a second type of client that's like, well, we did talk to them, and we told them what we were going to do. Did you ask them what they need? Did you ask them what their priorities are? One of my favorite stories is a senior manager named Ian Anderson at Oklahoma Gas and Electric. He's an Army. And they've created a culture where whenever he walks into the production side, he carries a box of donuts. Who doesn't love donuts? And he's done this so much that different donuts now have like different meanings. So there's like inside jokes to who got what donut. And it sounds silly. But I would tell you, when I deployed to the Middle East as an Army officer, I used to walk around the field. Every morning, I would grab chocolate milks and I'd throw them in my cargo pants. And when I went out and saw soldiers, I would hand them chocolate milks. It shows you care. It shows a little thing. It's a way to start a relationship, because it's the relationship that is the basis. The common mistake I see, again, summarizing everything I've just described, is we approach it like it's an IT technical problem when it is like an organizational change problem. Folks in other part of the business have seen this. They're tied to leadership objectives. They get stakeholder buy-in from a cross-functional group of folks that are interested, and they talk about it. And when we talk about it, by the way, that means we ask questions. We ask them what they need, what they want, what would make them happy. Remember when I was talking about that first lesson from the Purdue model? That shared service space. That is your opportunity to find something that has always annoyed them. Most likely, they have some sort of regulatory requirement, right? Like NERC CIP. Who wouldn't want somebody else to take care of that paperwork for them? I don't mean do it all, but part of what you're doing with establishing discovery and visibility and monitoring and change control is making it easier to be able to respond to those kinds of things. Another common one, and this always blows IT folks away. Third parties are constantly getting mandatory access into your OT environment. And it's written in a contract. Those vendors dictate that they will be able to directly access their own equipment. Well, hopefully, that's not just happening like any way that anybody feels it. There's some kind of access model. Who enjoys managing an access model? Is that fun? Doesn't that sound like something that I would love if you made that easy for me and you took care of it? That's a perfect shared service model where you in the IT side coming in are getting visibility, getting monitoring in an unobtrusive way, and they're getting their lives made easier.
Yeah, the culture piece is important here, and I think the takeaway from that is if you are in IT or cyber and you were tasked with building an OT program or incorporating the OT cybersecurity into your IT program, the best thing you can do is start asking questions and build cross-functional teams. I like to see those teams be persistent, not come together for a few conversations and then everybody go back and do what they were doing, but to get that value, because you might be the smartest person in the room when it comes to whatever you do, but you are not the smartest person in the room unless you're one of the 3 people that raised your hand around OT when it comes to how these systems work. You can't, for example, do things like say when somebody is using an OT system and there's a password failure, it locks the user out after so many, 3 attempts. Right? The last thing you want to do is lock an operator out of something that is managing a physical process somewhere. You don't do that. So we have to start involving them in the conversations and asking them what they're doing, how they're doing it, and then how you can help.
There we go. Let's go offense. Who's heard of MITRE ATT&CK? Who's heard of the Lockheed Martin kill chain? Let's make it simple. Bam. There are 3 phases to an attack. Reconnaissance. I'm the thief who cases the neighborhood and decides, nice G-Wagon. That's the house I'm targeting. And then I watch, and I gain and put together a target package based on who's home, do they have a dog, is there a fence, is it an electric fence, do they have an alarm system, right? The basic defensive controls. Do you know where the best gold mine of intelligence is for OSINT for building a target package on the planet? LinkedIn. LinkedIn shows me everybody at your company, shows me the relationship, shows me who they are, and your job descriptions list all of the defensive products you use. And most of those defensive products are installed with default credentials or misconfigured. So not only do I know what you got, I probably have a 1 in 4 chance without having done anything more than reading, going and getting the documentation that I will be able to get in against one of your security products. But we can't control that part. We need to hire people. There's information that gets out. But this is a part where we psychologically get hung up, the break-in. Back to our thief. The thief comes to the door, picks the lock, door opens. Have I robbed you yet? No. And yet we as an industry are fixated on how do we continue to build higher walls and electric fences and sharks with laser beams and moats around your house because the CEO read it in the back of a magazine in an airplane. Breach happens. It's not just a technical problem. There's so many ways in. But here's again, going back to what we can control and what matters, and that's why I have the organizational impact. Other than a denial of service, it's once you're in that matters. And once you're in is in what's in your control as the defender. It's the greatest impact. It's the greatest opportunity to detect and respond. And they have to make noise. They are there. We just have to figure out how to find them. But that's where they're literally making their money. So that's where your money is and where they're most vulnerable. So threat proximity. There's 3 kinds of proximities to how a threat gets to you, right? An attacker can't attack what they can't touch. The great change in the world was the fact that the internet was created. I can wake up somewhere across the world and attack you. I can try to rob you. 50 years ago, I needed to go to the bank directly to do that. Second is RF proximity, something within a radio frequency. This is incredibly important to understand in an operational technology environment. We're not quite as worried about that other than maybe our SSID got leaked or somebody can access that from outside the office. But in OT, we're going to have things that talk wireless, that are in isolated locations. And then finally, the last piece, which is absolutely, this is the insider threat, and we have public proof that there are attackers who are coming here and trying to bribe employees to plug things into the network is close access, right? What I physically can touch, I can do something about. So I put this here because we tend to fixate on the internet, but there are other models that are absolutely a part of what that proximity is to an attacker attacking you.
I feel passionately about the wireless one. I did just write a book on wireless security architecture. It's in the bookstore if you want it. So the Purdue model. Again, I'm going to spend about 45 seconds on this, so we can actually click through to one more slide. And I realized recently I was explaining the Purdue model to somebody, well, I was explaining OTICS to somebody and trying to explain to them why we couldn't do or wouldn't do or didn't want to do certain things up and down the different levels in the model. And I ended up with this because I was apparently up too late early that day as well, which is if you start to think about these things from a capability and a risk standpoint like you would your family, and especially children, it starts to make a little more sense and I think click with people if you're not used to that environment. So starting down at the bottom, we have things that are precious to us, but don't necessarily have the capabilities within themselves to defend. So we start layering and we have other things. We have babysitters, we have older siblings, we have classmates, we have parents. We might have an ecosystem around us that's part of our daily lives where there's grandparents and doctors and police officers and school resource officers and all of those people that they're dealing with. And then we selectively choose from the rest of the world, even if it's our world, even if it's in our home, we selectively choose what we're going to give our precious little assets access to. And that is the other way to think about segmentation, both from the IT and OT, but also within the OT environment. You don't let usually high school students from a different school or a different class stroll up into the kindergarten. So it's just one other way to kind of think about it if you don't work in this space and understand, okay, here's a just slightly different mindset as we work down in the lower levels about why and how we're protecting things, but we can't just assume we can do the normal stuff to them. You don't give the keys to the car and the regular scissors or a knife or a gun to your 3-year-old.
So my problem with Purdue is you see 5 levels. And we've all been trained in the concept of defense in depth. And it sure feels like I'm getting 5 levels of defense. I've had numerous clients actually have implemented what JJ said earlier, where they have one Active Directory for everything. And so Active Directory is hosted up there at level 4, engineering workstations down there at level 2 inside of a controlled segment get their Active Directory authentication from that IT server. I don't care how many firewalls or whatever you think you've got, you have just cut through all of your segmentation. It doesn't exist because that device expects that traffic from that AD server, so that's already built in. You've done all this work and thrown it right out the window.
And a quick good rule of thumb there is when you're at that perimeter, at that 3.5, you don't ever want you can send stuff out. If you need to send stuff out to the cloud, out to the IT, out to whatever for monitoring and whatever you're going to do with it, that's fine. But you don't want to send stuff back down in. There should never be anything coming from 4 or up into 3 and below. There's a couple little asterisks and caveats with that, but 99.9% of the time, that's where we draw the line.
So the attacker's view of Purdue. The most common initial access vector is actually not directly against operational technology. I am not saying do not worry about exposure management for OT, but what we see out there is the most common approach is the traditional socially based initial access into the IT environment, move laterally. If that's where your Active Directory is, then I go get that and I'm done. And then I always cross over because there's always a connection point. And the most obvious one is typically billing. How else do I know what to charge unless the OT is speaking back into IT? So there is always a connection. An air gap is not an air gap is not an air gap. Yeah? And here's the problem. Because we feel like, I mean, there are probably 80 to 100,000 unique device types in the OT space. They speak protocols that I still don't know, and it's not because I don't know what Modbus is, it's because I don't know that particular version of proprietary Modbus. But here's the thing, you don't have to. Because once I make that crossover, those high-level industrial control systems, the HMIs, the DCSs, the SISs, they run Windows and Linux from 3 to 4 generations ago that are no longer supported. And their job is already implemented and instrumented into the rest of the lower level architecture. This is not what we see in Ukraine, where it's in Destroyer 2, where it is carefully crafted malware to attack OT. All I need to do is take over a device that you've already configured to run your stuff that's running an old IT operating system. It already speaks all the protocols, and it already knows everything it's supposed to be managing, which then collapses the whole bottom layer, because that's now just where I'm telling what to do with the living off the land that's already available to me.
Or not even take it over. I mean, one of the, not the most recent one, but one of the water plants that was hacked was simply one of the HMIs, PLC HMI that was integrated and has a little GUI built into it. Once you plug that into Ethernet instead of serial, it automatically enables remote access, and the default password was 1111. And you don't have to be targeted, because we use Shodan. You can just go scan the internet and see where these things are. So sometimes it's very vanilla 101. Most of the time it's I hate to say eat your veggies, but it is eat your veggies. And the OT teams that are deploying this, and sometimes the vendors that are deploying it for them, don't understand or don't know that happened, and that's fine, that's not their job, but here's your opportunity to help.
So here's, again, one of those weird wins that we can actually do with offense and risk assessments, which most folks typically start to cringe when you're like, you're gonna do what on a production environment? Here's how. This is where the purple teaming process can help you. Purple teaming, since we've all graduated kindergarten, we know red plus blue is purple. Broader, it is a collaborative, milestone-driven exercise. We're gonna do a risk assessment where we agree to these 3 things together. First, scope. Again, we've already covered that the most common threat vector is in from IT, so doing risk assessments focused on IT actually benefits OT. And you can start to bring them into those to build the relationship where you can give them confidence in you, the process, and the tooling. And you start then shifting left, again, like the attacker does, moving to the OT environment. My favorite starting point for a joint assessment in their space would be a Bastion box, a Bastion or a jump host. It's something that's not critical. It tends to run, again, Windows or Linux, and it's easy now to bring it into their space where you can bring this to a conclusion. But at the end of the day, OT decides scope. You can't push them past where they're comfortable or where they're bought in. The other 2 factors that you can do are the frequency of these assessments. How often should we be doing these together? And that's going to be a leadership driven and what your organization can do, because one of the advantages of the purple team is we're not doing the traditional red team approach of, hey, I did something, I won, I threw a report at you, good luck. Because it's not like you didn't need more work. We're fixing it together, but there's still an amount of time and commitment to that. The final piece is, what's the complexity of the attack I'm trying to do? You don't need a red team to do this. You just need a red capability. You need something that can safely drive that signal to what you can control. There are free tools out there, like Atomic Red Team by Red Canary is a great starting point. But this is where you get to choose, beyond scope and frequency, is what's the realism and complexity of the attack that I want to demonstrate to learn from. Oh. And I guess I'm posing like this during an attack. I'm feeling very self-conscious.
I couldn't pass that opportunity up.
Thank you.
So in our last little minute here, let's look at the apply slide, because we've thrown a lot of stuff at you guys. So the first thing is, if we haven't beat this into you already in the past 50 minutes, get the stakeholder support and then build those cross-functional teams. Then you need to figure out where you are with things. Remember that we have this kind of crawl, walk, run model, and where you should be heading towards, and your goalpost really depends on your use case for OT, the criticality of it within your business environment. And then you're getting into following those steps we talked through, which was the inventory, vulnerabilities, and getting full visibility, and then making a plan for architecture. Thanks, guys. We'll take questions outside.